Nowadays, we are all are facing by any means the violence against us in day-to-day practice. So today we have very good speakers and very nice panel discussions later on the various topics related to the hospital violence. To start the proceedings, I would like to invite the Indian Orthopedic Association President, Dr. ATUL Shrivastava, to formally inaugurate the proceedings of today's webinar. Dr. ATUL Shrivastava.
Thank you, Rahul Bhai, and good evening, friends. I must congratulate the Medical Legal Committee of the Indian Orthopedic Association for conceptualizing this very important, very interesting webinar. And let me tell you, on the speakers panel, we have the best that we can have. Dr. N.J. Karne, my dear friend, Dr. Govind Purohit, and Dr. DEEPAK Shah. And the panelists are also esteemed panelists like Dr. Vijay PURUSHOTTUM and Dr. ANUP AGARWAL. I'm sure, and we cannot escape this now in today's scenario. So it's a very pertinent, very relevant topic, and I'm sure we are going to gain a lot. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations once again. Eagerly waiting to listen to you all. Thank you.
So thank you, President, sir. In today's webinar, we have got 3 lectures from the eminent faculty among all our orthopedic surgeons who are also the medical legal experts and a very good expert in the field. So our first presentation is regarding the root causes of the violence against doctors, and this presentation will be delivered by none other than Dr. N.J. Karne, who is the chairman of the Office Orthopedic Committee of Indian Orthopedic Association and the past chairman of the Legal and Grievance Committee of IOA, and he is secretary and treasurer of Maharashtra Orthopedic Association, joint secretary of West Zone Orthopedic Association. He has delivered so many lectures, conducted so many seminars on the medical legal topics. I would like to invite Dr. N.J. Karne to present his lecture.
Shall I share my screen?
Yes, sir, please. For the audience, if there are any questions, you can drop down your questions on the chat box on Ortho TV. So then we can take up all those questions during the discussion.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Good evening, friends. First of all, I thank our Honorable President, Dr. ATUL Shrivastava ji, for gearing up the working of the IOA and had done a phenomenal work in increasing the interest of all the orthopedic surgeons, as well as giving the lot of knowledge to all the orthopedic surgeons. And I thank Dr. Rahul KATTA that started such a wonderful seminar, which is essential for the day-to-day practice nowadays to not only orthopedic surgeons, but for all over other specialties also. So now, what is the current situation? No physician, however conscious or the careful, can tell what day or hour it may not be the object of some undesired attack, malicious accusation, blackmail, or suit for the damages. And this particular prophetic paragraph is from the reputed journal from USA, written 135 years ago. So that was the said, and unfortunately that holds true today also and will be there in the future. There are different types of the violences. Most mild is the verbal abuse. Then there are aggressive gestures, slaps, or the beating, or the grievous injuries, or the ransacking and the vandalism in the hospital. Last few years, there are worldwide reports of violence against the doctors, sometimes leading to the grievous hurt and murder also. In India, there are 3 murders up till now. In India, this menace hasn't been highlighted adequately up till now. Just about a decade back, there was hardly any news or any discussion about this in medical journals or the conferences. And recently, IOM has reported that at least 75% of the doctors in India have faced the violence at some or other point of the time in their life. This kind of different type of violence, right from verbal abuse to others. Now, why this situation arise? These situations across all hospitals, let it be government hospital, teaching, nursing homes, or the big or corporate hospitals also. Generally, this occurs because of the sudden unexpected death or sudden deterioration of the patient, obviously for the bills and the bad results. Rarely, patient himself attacks that which has happened in Kerala, but mainly to the relatives, local goons, political leaders, or sometimes when the police can do the certain things. It is a multifactorial. We see one by one. There are patient factors, political or goon-related one, government factors, media factors, doctor factors themselves, as well as the hospital or the healthcare facility factors. Now, what are the patient factors? Generally, the patient or relatives are bereaved and there is emotional outburst which may quickly result in the violence. In case either they are initially aggrieved, dissatisfied, or irritated. Then, if there is a young patient and which becomes suddenly serious, and sometimes the person is only earning member in the family, and sometimes it's the only child with a serious disease. So these are the ones when they're already emotionally distressed and sudden something happens, they get wild. Then sudden unexpected death or unaccepted complications can result in violence. And these days, this has become a fashion that if there is a wide difference in the bills, what has been told in the beginning and at the time of discharge, then they get irritated. Now, the response depends upon the nature of the person or the relatives. First of all, how much is their understanding level or what is the analytical capacity of a given situation. So generally this is related to the social status as well as the culture, and the reaction of the person differs accordingly. The higher society or the higher culture people generally don't resort to the violence. They go for the medico-legal litigations, but not for violence. Generally, this is for the lower class or those who are having the conflicting nature. For every now and then, they just start shouting. Then, of course, if the certain relatives are under the influence of the alcohol or drugs, most of the part that these people are ignorant. They are not aware that the vandalism and the violence in the hospital or the clinic is a criminal offense. And sometimes they feel that they have got a good psychological support from the local politician or the stalwarts, which will help them even if they do anything. So what is necessary is educating patient and their relatives with the relevant posters that how this particular violence is criminal, that has to be maintained at prominent places. This is a totally different topic altogether, how to face or avoid the violence. Then the next person says the political related so-called social workers. Basically, actually, their basic intention is not to help the people. Sorry to say, I'm a little bit extremist, but generally these are opportunistic, greedy, and really ruthless one. Generally, the lower level leader, Galli Pudhari, we call them, they are involved in this. Higher level leaders are generally do not resort to all these things. And these lower level, lower cadre leaders, they do it for the cheap publicity. And they will go to any extent to please his voters. And sometimes he want to show that how much he's helping the alleged poor patient. And then he goes to that resort. And it has happened in some of the cases that these particular politicians had already previous grudge or the prejudice against the doctors because he was not treated when he went to the hospital as a VIP, or he has the doctor has not bent for his undue demands like a bill reduction or the contribution to his mandals or mahotsav and different events altogether. Then he keeps that thing in the mind, and then his ego gets hurt. So the political persons, as far as doctors are concerned, generally don't extort money actually, but their ego is very important. And once their ego is hurt by the sort of, you can say, straightforward doctor, white collar doctor, he becomes a soft target. Then this guy finds an opportunity to vent out all his previous grudges. The suicide which has happened in the Indore by the woman, that was because the politicians was waiting for 2 to 3 years to harass them. Then these people, they had deliberately changed the perceptions about the doctor in the society. And they are the ones who are controlling the police as well as the media and the society. And they are so much cold-blooded that sometimes they increase the situation and they are keen on the settlement. This is sort of for the extortion. These are the real cause of the violence. And apparently, they condemn the violence, but surprisingly, they try to justify how that was correct and how doctor was wrong, all those things. So a solution is better to keep the good relations for the long-term benefit. At least try to see that their egos are not hurt at any cost. And I give the example of the Satyanarayan, there is Satyanarayan Puja. And in Satyanarayan, they are given that if you offend Satyanarayana, they will drown your ship, which is full of the goods. But if you please him, the same Satyanarayana will take up the ship out of the sea, and he will keep you prosper. So these are the politicians who are the Satyanarayanas of these days. Now, second is actually gundas. Generally, they are semi-political, but of course, no gunda can survive without the political support. It is a basic percentage of these gundas here of the arrogance and the confrontation. And they get wild with the slightest provocation. They make issue out of nothing. And especially if this happens in the night time, they are generally under the influence of the alcohol. And they incite the psychology of the mob. And when the mob becomes violent in the feet of the rage, many bad things happen. And these people, these gundas, they don't bother about the consequences because of their political support. And their main aim is to make rada. These gundas are the one who are don't come there for the solving the issues. They want to make a rada and make a commotion. And sometimes they get just a mental satisfaction out of that. Just like suppose there is a road accident and then the truck driver is found, he's beaten by everybody, every Tom and Dick and Harry on the road. Similarly, this happens when the gundas they take over. And surprisingly, the civilized society doesn't show any low tolerance for such heinous acts. Actually, there is a candle march. If the person or patient dies in the hospital, there are candle marches even in Pune also. But there is not a single march anywhere in India when a doctor is beaten or even murdered also. So that is actually part of the society also. They should come forward for avoiding such things. The next is about the media related. Now, any kind of media, let it be printing media, social media, or electronic media, and even the movies also. They don't have real understanding of the challenges which are faced by the doctors. They don't understand there are many uncertainties in the management of the patient, which is not in the rather beyond the control of the physician. But what they want to do is they want to sensationalize their news. They want more and more TRPs. And sometimes there are certain media, like a TV channels also, or the even social media on the Facebook and WhatsApp, that they are masala hungry people. And the biggest example was of the Amir Khan, who was shedding the tears that how the patients are treated by the hospital and how the hospitals are looting. And these are the ones which are misguiding the people, and they instigate one, and then the patient becomes prejudiced, and with the slightest provocation, he gets wild. Now, of course, there are certain government related also. Actually, government should punish unlawful behavior of the, anybody who is that, who harms a doctor and who vandalizes the hospital. Actually, there are laws in Maharashtra also. There is a law for violence against a doctor, but it is not at all implemented properly. That is the biggest thing. And second thing, if at all there is a legal procedure, it also takes inordinately very long time. It goes for years together. And most of the time, these victims are scot-free because of the lack of the witnesses, because they are witnesses are pressurized there. Only recently, only one judgment it went in favor of doctor. Otherwise, most of are acquitted. And unfortunately, the central government is refusing to bring better and effective laws to avoid the violence against doctor. That is a very bad thing which is happening. And our associations are trying their best, but somewhere we are lacking in sensitization of the politicians. Now, what happens? The custodians of the government, that is the police, they sometimes assume that the hospital or the doctor is guilty and they have got a soft corner about the patient. And sorry to say, but they look this as an opportunity to extort the doctors. And that is what is the corruption which occurs. As if some doctor is found anywhere in a certain things, there are many vultures which are around them. And they society is one of that which causes violence. Now, there are certain factors which are related to the hospital also. Hospital also, there are certain things which are the reason of the cause of this violence. There is a lack of proper complaint redressal system. This is very, very, very important. Even in small nursing home also, a doctor himself is a counselor. In a big hospital, in corporate hospital, there are general departments, but that has to be effective, and they should have such a system to vent the anger of the patient. Second part in the hospital is the billing system are sometimes non-opaque. They tell something else in the beginning and they start increasing the charges, and they are putting certain charges, and then patient gets gradually irritated. Then second thing is that this has happened in some of the government hospital, that certain breakdown of equipment, the CT scan is not working, MRI is not working, and sometimes not available there. Patient wants to, patient requires CT scan and he's asked to go outside to get the CT scan. And one of the doctor in Dhule was beaten seriously when his one eye was damaged just because CT scan of the patient was not working. CT scan of the hospital was not working. Then this happens in the government hospital generally, that there is unhygienic and extremely crowded condition, especially around the emergency and other wards, and patient is already irritated, and that mind setup is of sort of that kind. The another part is that, especially government hospital and teaching hospitals, even corporate hospitals, the senior doctor face less violence than the junior doctors. Maybe this is related to either less exposure of the senior doctors to explosive situation, his better handling of the situation, his social or political influence, or maybe he getting respect from patient relatives because of his long years of the experience. But what I mean to say, especially for the medical students or the residents who are working in the hospital, this management as well as senior doctors should take cognizance, and they should make certain things, because it is junior doctors who are facing the brunts, especially in the night time. As I said, the poor and shabby healthcare infrastructure also creates irritability in the patient's mind. What is required is a rapid action, or the code gray is there for this particular purpose, that it is in a situation, a combative situation, or the abusive behavior by the patient, families, even the staff or the physician is there. The code gray is, has to be taught to everybody in the hospital. With a one alarm, the almost all the staff from the hospital should come there. Because if they see the large number of the patient, the violence, the chance of the violence are much less. Then diseases are coming up, securities are there almost everywhere, but the bouncers, especially around the ICU, is necessary these days. And one more part is that no arms or the ammunition by the patient or relative should be allowed inside the hospital. This hospital can do, because if that is allowed, then the violence chances are very high. Of course, there are certain doctor-related issues also. There is a generalized feeling among the patients that the doctor is doing the wrongdoing for a financial gain, or the doctor is avoiding his duties, which is required. Then there is anxiety. Patient is already anxious, and if he has to wait for a long period of the time before he sees the doctor, he is already irritated. Another part is that he feels, especially in the ICU or the serious patient, that doctor is not giving enough attention to his patient, and then he gets already frustrated. And sometimes the patient becomes quite serious, and then he's referred. So they feel that why you're not referred the patient in the beginning. So inordinate delay in the referral is one of the part. Then this is very important behavior toward the patient, the relatives. What I always say, you win the situation not in the operation theater or the ICU, outside when you are talking to the patient. When if something goes wrong in the ICU and if you are convincing the patient correctly, patient doesn't relative don't get disturbed. But if you have done the best to the person and you have not counseled relatives properly, they get violent. So this is one of the very important part is effective counseling. Then what is required, because the doctor, all our residents and doctors are taught only the academics in their studies, but now probably the time has come that we have to add development of the communication skill in the curriculum, so that to avoid all these things. Second is, in your practice also, you should develop a sense that who are the probably potential violent relatives or the situation before it escalates, or before things go out of the control. We should get alert in the beginning. I say that there are certain red flags which are there we should take care of. Then there are certain venues where the violence is very common. One is a casualty where the emergency patient comes, and second is the ICU where the death occurs. So all the doctors should have better training to tackle these situations. That's why this medical legal group which is there, or medical legal committee is trying its hard to train the doctors and how to avoid the litigation, how to avoid the violence. So I thank IOA as well as the president and the chairman for this. And lastly, this may not be true, but one has to be ready to run from the scene. The situation demands, if the crowd is large and you find that they are not in the mood to listen to anything, it's better to save their life and run away is the better thing. So summary is, incidence of the violence against doctor in India is increasing a lot. Emergencies and the ICUs are the most violent venues. Visiting hours especially are the most violent time where everybody should be alert. There are many reasons that doctors and the healthcare workers also have certain responsibilities, but at the same time, the responsibilities have also to be borne by the patient and their relatives, political parties, hospital authorities. They should protect the doctors and the staff from the violence. They should make all the arrangements accordingly, and the law maintaining machinery, especially the police and the media and the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Karne, sir. You have enlightened us about the various causes of the violence against the doctors. So we'll
Actually, this is a very vast topic, but we have only 15 minutes, so I tried to cover up most of the things.
But you have covered it beautifully. So we'll discuss it later on while the discussion part. So we'll move on to our next topic, the radical treatment or how to tackle the violence. And it will be taken by Dr. DEEPAK SHAH, who is orthopedic surgeon from Bhopal. He has done his LLB, is ex-chairman of the grievance committee of IOA and legal cell committee of MP IOA. Is member of mediation committee state level formed under new Consumer Protection Act, and he is also the speaker at the State Consumer Forum and also involved in various activities of medical legal webinars and seminars. So over to you, Dr. DEEPAK Shah, sir. Please share your screen. In the meantime, I would like to welcome the IOA Vice President Dr. Anup Agarwal and Dr. VJ Purushottam, who are our panelists today for the discussion.
Thank you, Rahul sir. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, all of you.
Good evening to all. Thanks.
Good evening, Anupji. Good evening, Purushottam, sir.
Good evening, bless up.
Am I audible, please?
Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah. Okay. I thank President sir and Dr. Katta both for giving me this opportunity to share my views about hospital violence and treatment and how to tackle it. Dr. Karne has made my job very easy by going into all the details about the causes and reasons and what are the areas and other things. I'll just go through the slides that is invariably the hospital violence. The medical, paramedical staff are suffered. There is a ransacking and sometimes rioting also. Now, unfortunately, the violence is increasing tremendously in the last decade. Whether this could be like this or up to this or up to the outside the building also. Even the vehicles and the ambulances are also not spared by these people. It's not only in India, it's a global phenomenon. And in United States, also almost 100 health workers were killed in the last 5 years. Emergency room workers, and as expected, our colleague nearby country has got one of the very maximum incidences. Now, the NHS staff in the England, in last time they have multiplied, they are beaten, they are stabbed. There was a study by IMA, Dr. Lele has done, and he found out that almost 70% of the health workers have suffered. And interestingly, the prestigious institutes and the government hospitals are also not spared. This is what that I was referring to, Dr. Jayesh Lele. At that time, he has found 30 to 40% of the doctors. And as informed by Dr. Karne, the government doctors and the others are also not spared. Now, what are the different threats what we find? Either you find it on telephonic threats or intimidation, verbal abuse, very common. The future threats and the physical assaults, the murder has been, and the vandalism and the arson. Now, one of the main reasons is the change in our image. Now, in what Hippocrates, and at that time we had the image of the medical profession, has totally changed. And unfortunately, during the COVID time, initially we had a very good reputation, but that image was torn in the second phase. There was a very interesting advertisement in Calcutta Times of India a few years back. I'm sure most of us must have seen. And it says that do not pay the hospital bills, contact us. Pay 25% of the bill and get your patient discharged. This was a group of people, goons and the politicians, who will go to the hospital and then they will create a scene there and they will forcefully get the patient discharged. Indian scenario, there was a Bombay Hospital Journal, they have worked out that what are the different areas where this thing happened. This I come to initially into the later things. Now,
Please interrupt you, sir. Please make your slides full screen. Your slides are not moving even.
Okay. On my side, it's total.
No, sir. We can't see in full screen mode. We can see only the first slide, and that will be on the PowerPoint, not in the slide view mode.
I don't think it is coming up beyond that.
No, sir. No, it is.
It is okay? No.
No.
I think you should go to slide share.
Okay, then I have to exit myself first.
I think better exit and reshare, sir. And then make it full screen.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, now it's full screen.
Try to change the slide. Go ahead.
It's not changing.
Yeah, it's not changing.
Okay, then you can go ahead with your lecture.
Yeah.
Now it is there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we will just find it out. What is the impact of this violence into the society? And one of the important things is that people have stopped admitting in ICCU and they've closed down their ICCU. And they are not admitting serious patients. And many of the lives have been lost. I know few of my friends working in Prayagraj and other areas, they have stopped admitting serious patients. To the medical professionals, what they face if they are beaten up or they are being harassed, the post-traumatic stress is very heavy. Fear and anxiety in treating the patients afterwards. They try to remain absent. The senior doctors, they put the blame on the juniors. Insomnia and depression are the other parts. Incidentally, the doctors have not opting for a surgery side. And this is a reason now you find so many seats are going vacant. Now, we have got two aspects, how to prevent and how to manage. Now, the circumstances in the government hospital, corporate hospitals are different, but most of us who are having entrepreneurship and working as small and medium-sized hospitals, like up to 50 beds or 100 beds, they are finding it difficult to manage these things. Anything happens, they are confused. So how to prevent? The reduction of violence or victimization is to remove or reduce the underlying cause. Dr. Karnde has detailed the causes. I'll just go through which are important to in prevention. The lack of communication between doctor and the patient. Now, patient-doctor relation are changing very speedily. Poor image of the doctors and the role of media. The media trial always damages the doctor in spite of that whether there is no negligence. Health budget and poor quality of health care. Frustration with systemic problems of government hospitals, lack of staff, facilities, etc. This reflects onto the junior doctors and vulnerability of the small and medium-sized health establishments because of insufficient security and limited staff. The low health literacy rate of our public is one of the reasons. Desire to achieve 2 minutes fame. Now, this is very common as informed by Dr. Karne that the local politicians and the goons, they will take fame in this. Lack of faith in judicial process and police. Now, unfortunately, the circumstances which are going, and I'm sorry to say, used by the government also, they are doing those things which are not supported by the law. The mob mentality, that is small-time leaders, and the caste-based and the other politics also plays a very big role. And the people know that there are no laws where they will be punished because the mob has got altogether different. Now, what are the locations where usually this violence and other things will happen? The first and common is emergency room, then the ICCU, while transportation, billing, a very important area, your rules not allowing the patient or attendants, and high activity hours, and so many rush is there. Now, invariably, we will give the patient very rosy picture they take seriously patients' suspicion of filling and wherever possible follow their suggestion. Now, a very common example, you find clinically that patient doesn't have a fracture, but patient says that get one X-ray done, and invariably our response was, are you a doctor or I am a doctor? Accept his advice. You are not going to lose anything by doing. Now, so many times we give a very, very rosy picture about the result. In spite of that, we know that we may not be able to give the very good result. And when you don't get a good result, then there is a problems. Criticizing colleagues. Now, so many times we have find that our doctor friends stimulates the patient and the attendants. Now, what is the reason why this particular thing happens in most of the cases? The patient's relative question by a senior doctor, if not answered, this creates anxiety. And if somebody just stimulates, it becomes aggravation. And then there are so many people who will convert into violence. Now, how to manage? Dealing with an aggressive patient is the most important thing. Do not meet anger with anger. If you do this, then you are precipitating or you are creating a very good media for this thing to happen. You should remain calm, listen to what they are saying and ask open-ended questions and answer them. Reassure them and acknowledge their grievances, but at the same time, you should always call for the help. How this could be, that I'll come later. Provide them with opportunity to explain what has angered them. In case of death or a bad news, this is a difficult, but then maintain eye contact with them. Don't look down, don't say sorry, because once you say sorry, it automatically is considered that you are at the fault. Make a small group of doctors which can take over in such and circumstances, and you do find that if or some doctors are on your side, then this thing dilutes by itself. A single doctor finds it difficult to fight. Keep adequate distance from the attendants, but keep away from the corners. Always, as rightly said by Dr. Karne, that your life is first, so you should have this opportunity. If they become violent, then you should be able to run away. When you are talking to the attendants, keep a good number of staff, particularly male staff with you when you are talking to the attendants. And those staff should be trained, if required, to save yourself, and aggressive behavior should be handled. If the patient and attendant has a weapon, ask them to put it down. They should not be allowed to take it inside, but don't ask them to hand over. This will unnecessarily instigate them. And leave the room if you find the attendants are aggressiveness is increasing. Now, about certain things, Madhya Pradesh was first state, second state rather, to start law to save the medical professional in 2008. But the problem with these all laws are that though this is a cognizable offense, but the punishment is for less than 7 years, so they get bail immediately. There is a very interesting observation that in Punjab and Haryana also they have a similar law, but in last 5 years when RTI was filed, most of the FIR were not registered. And very interesting that the police officers were also not available, knowing that these type of law do exist in their cities or in the state. Now, we come to the management side. In Bhopal, we have made one Bhopal model, and the basic idea was united we stand and divided we fall. We had a WhatsApp THAKKAR group, and where all the hospitals were there, and along with the senior police officials are also added in this group. This group was exclusively for any emergency expected or arising in any of the hospitals. we have divided Bhopal into certain zones, and our manager will inform surrounding doctors, so they will reach there, and because they can reach early, traffic and other problems are not there. And association members try to reach as soon as possible. Now, similarly, after that, in Gwalior, they had some bouncers services. They will go to all hospitals daily, and they will stay there for half an hour. And this will make thing that if some distress is there, they will reach within 15 minutes in duty hours and in emergency also. Now, there was a huge cry in media that this type of bouncers will beat up patients and the attendants. So they were given a name of peace ambassador. And this was like that they will go daily and they will put their timings there. And SP and IG were convinced that this is just for our security and not to damage anybody else. And Medical Legal Society of India, based at Pune, Dr. Rajiv Joshi, is doing a very good job in this, and he is pleading himself in different courts. Recently, he pleaded at Kerala also. Now, this is a message to the society from our side. Allow us to treat you without fear. Allow us to save the lives without fear of losing ours. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak Shah, for your presentation. So we'll go first for the another presentation, then go for discussion. If any of the audience is having any questions, they can drop down their questions in the chat box. Now I would like to invite Dr. Govind Purohit for the another lecture, the structural changes which are needed to address for the prevention of the hospital violence. Dr. Govind Purohit is a very renowned senior orthopedic surgeon, and he has a very good achievement nationally, internationally in the court AUS. He is law graduate, also having the legal knowledge in patient management, grievance settlement, as well as the preventive practice. So over to you, Dr. Govind Purohit, sir. Sir, unmute yourself, please.
Okay. Is it okay?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me for this golden opportunity for presenting prevention and changes in the structure to prevent the assault on the doctors. Yeah.
Sir, please
Violence
make
against
full screen, please.
Violence against doctor, a wake-up call. This is a paragraph as described by Dr. Karne from a reputed journal from the USA, written 135 years ago. It should have been an eye-opener long back, but in the race to become God, we are losing the battle as the days and years pass. In last few years, violence against doctors is increasing. Pandemic spectrum ranging from abuse, violent gesture, aggression. This has recently turned to vandalize the hospitals, now leading to grievous hurt or even cases of murder, killing doctor and staff in the hospital on the duty are making the headlines across the world and in our country also. This menace has not been highlighted adequately by the media persons.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Your slides are not moving, and make your slides full screen, please.
Here my slides are moving.
No, sir. No, it's not moving. We can't see it. Once you stop sharing and then share again.
Yeah, you just close the program also and again restart, as well as you join back again. First you close this particular file.
Is it okay?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it has started. Okay.
Yeah, please.
It should have been an eye opener long back, but in the case to become God, we are losing the battle as days and years pass. In the last few years, as we have seen, violence against doctors is increasing. Pandemic spectrum ranging from abuse, violent gesture, aggression. This has recently turned to vandalize the hospital, now leading to grievous hurt or even cases of murder, killing doctor or staff in the hospital on duty are making headlines across the world, and even in our country also. This menace has not been highlighted adequately by media persons. Violence against doctor or other medical fraternity has become endemic as well as pandemic worldwide, and as against COVID-19. COVID pandemic is gone in few years, but assault on us will continue for lifetime. Therefore, there is no reason to wait now, but act positively by all efforts to stop this violence and take strict preventive measures. I am here to discuss and share the same with you, the prevention. Our old age status as God long back is turned down nowadays as devil, demon, or money sucker with the so-called medical vikas or industrialization. The trust and relations which we used to build with the patients in the past no longer exist now. Our status as a doctor has been taken away, washed away by our digital competitors or enemies, namely Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, and also our image as a doctor is underrun by the corporate hospitals. Senior doctors are spared most of the time, juniors and paramedicals affected as compared to corporate hospital, which are less affected. For government hospital, primary health centers are the main culprit and more vulnerable to the assault. This is epidemiological trial. Dr. Karne has already explained all the factors. I need not go into details of it. Now, what can be done to reduce the violence against the doctors? I have explained in the terms of P&SM, Preventive and Social Medicine. P stands for Protection Team Against the Violence. Poster display, prevent or restrict the entry to the public, strengthen the doctor-patient relationship, spend more GDP on healthcare establishments by government, spend more time in the hospital by patient bed, mock drill, monthly medical teaching, and medical unity. Preparation of the protection team and educate its doctor and staff members what to do in case of aggression and violence against the medical professional. Senior doctor must reach the spot to minimize any escalating situation, isolation, cornering of the involved staff, and make him escape skillfully from the site is the best measure to save the life. This is the sentence. Putting posters in the hospital, you should say that you cannot get best treatment, fast treatment, and cheap treatment, all the three simultaneously. It is very difficult to get. So also put a notice that we provide treatment by professional doctors who are humans and not gods. If you prefer to get treated by God, please visit the temple next door. So conveying the another poster that violence is illegal and punishable. This is actually IPC states for assault and vandalism, which we should remember, recollect, remind to the needed patient to warn and display poster in the hospital reception area. Security guards and good quality CCTV cameras must be placed in the risky areas. Mobile phones should be strictly off. These are the main culprit nowadays. Recording and showing decision on the Google doctor also. And stringent law help in our whole country. There are many states and each state have different protocol of penalty or cognizance of this crime, which is surprisingly painful. No uniform policy exists despite so many cases occurring. State of Madhya Pradesh makes violence seriously as cognizable and non-menable. As against it does not exist in many of the states. Amount amount of fine, penalty, as well as years of imprisonment are different in different states. Arunachal Pradesh has a penalty of as high as 5 lakhs, as against the Himachal imposes fine as low as 5,000 only. But most of the instances are underreported by us in the fear of defamation, press news, and fear of loss of practice. We should force the government to enforcement of this central law and improve enforcement of the existing state laws. A very much preventive step that government must take to grant justice to the healthcare workers. Prevent or restrict the entry of the public is already discussed by Dr. Karne. This is very important, and display of the board is also of CCTV that will also restrict this type of instances, and the mob mentality violence also can be prevented by this. Identify the risk persons, risk areas, vulnerable staff, timing areas, hospital, and act accordingly, and avoid long waiting period before the patient could speak to a doctor, and also have a good grievance addressal system, because legal procedure in India is taking long time, so patient become impatient and go for the violence and vandalism. It is also important to develop the doctor-patient relationship by good communication. This must begin by the doctor informing the patient and the family about what is going on. Also inform about the cost of treatment, prognosis, need for repeat surgery, regular follow-up, and others. Patient can take the help of the Dr. Google for finding details about the treatment, so you have to be very careful. Also, while giving second opinion in case of complication by our colleague, be careful to avoid criticism of our colleague. We should explain to the patient and relative that this complication is written in medical literature and could also happen with me or with any patient or any doctor. This will definitely alleviate the grievance most of the time. Other measures for prevention are training of staff or tolerance for minor things to avoid unnecessary conflicts, arguments, or discussion with the patient or relatives. Clearly prognosticate the plan, expenditure, explanation to the patient and relatives with the proper consent. Also, presence of staff, doctors at the crisis period is essential. Presence of doctor is must, and I have observed this only will avoid 99% of the problems, even if a patient dies in front of the doctor. Indemnity, insurance, and PPS by association help for medical negligence to a doctor give confidence to treat the complicated cases. It gives financial cover in case of litigation, but cannot help in hospital attack or assault on doctors. No protection for abuse or assault on criminal proceedings is available in the insurance. For government spend more GDP, in India, the cause of violence against doctor is multi-layered, spending around 1% of the GDP by a government in a population which increased 5 times since the independence is not enough. Government needs to put the effort to see how the overcrowding in the hospital can be prevented, facilities can be increased for the patient. Modern medicine is progressing by leaps and bounds, but most of the medical colleges, hospitals in the country could not keep pace with the progress. The regular advancement, upgradation process of all the department, machine, man, and system are required. Government should also concentrate its activity on preventive medicine. Concentrate also on promotive health also. For doctor, spend more time in the hospital, not with beautiful nurse, but with the patient. Because in case of sudden death, OT is a grievous problem. Try to avoid it. Almost always advise post-mortem, even if the patient relatives are cool and calm, and call police if relatives are aggressive or arrogant. If post-mortem is refused by relatives, take proper consent without prejudice, without any grievance. Do not hesitate to call dial 100 if you think. Mock drill are needed to be conducted, and each staff member should be clear about their role if the situation of impending or actual violence does arise. All hospitals develop a SOP for violence and develop a protection team. Team should be fully trained how to handle the situation. Distinct siren may also be installed in the hospital to alert everyone in case violence occurs in the hospital campus, and members of the protection team should form a human chain around the doctor, healthcare professional under threat, and he should be allowed to escape first. medical training on workplace violence. Medical students must be taught about how to prevent and deal with the aggression and violence against doctor, and it should become a part of the medical curriculum. All employees, especially those in the high-risk environment, and serves to keep employee abreast of organizational policies and practices related to violence prevention. This may include information on reporting requirements, safety protocols, available tools and resources, and specific training modules such as de-escalation training. The training for tolerance for minor things, patience to avoid unnecessary conflicts and arguments. We have already discussed this will avoid 99% problems. These are the 4 pillars of problem: cost, economics, consent, communication, coordination, which will avoid confusion about the treatment, cost, complication, and cooperative in accidental complications, sympathetic, transparent, honest. Essential to remain alert, communicate at every step during treatment, and watch for the signs of aggression and violence by doctors for both patient and their loved ones during an emergency. During sickness and medical emergency, the patient and their loved ones are also emotionally distressed. Numerous factors affect the patient as well as their friends and family. Try to listen their problem without interruption and avoid a long waiting time. Inform valid consent for the patient and their family members after a detailed explanation about the prognosis, treatment outcome, need for repeat surgery, and cost of treatment. These are essential in the patient language and dialect of the patient, replayably with the witness before any step is taken. Now we have started taking additional consent that in case of any mechanical or electrical failures, even after we have checked everything, scopes, drills, even the inverter or emergency lights, everything can fail, and in that case operation may be delayed, postponed, or even cancelled for that time. So this is very important. The documentation must, proper documentation of patient which start from the patient coming for the treatment until they are discharged. The cases in which each step of the procedure is clearly documented along with the consent forms, the healthcare providers will be favored. Be careful in case of accidental death. If you adopt the system of NAVEEN, most of the errors are excluded and we become extra careful by all means. Again, medical unity, as already discussed, community needs to be united to handle the crisis of violence against the doctors, especially by forming a WhatsApp group, Rush to Stop Violence Against the Practitioner, RSVP, as discussed by Dr. DEEPAK. The legislative measures taken to curtail violence against doctors have repeatedly failed to address the issue despite being notified in almost 19 states in the country in the past decade. So we must thank the doctors of the Rajasthan who have brought down the government to curtail the law against the medical profession. Same way, we can bring and implement tough law to protect the medical protections. So we should force the government in this respect. And I think we should give leadership to the Rajasthan doctors also. So media sensitization is again a very important. Doctor need to sensitize the media to avoid publishing sensational news. For this purpose, they should be invited to our medical conferences as well as regular press conferences should be kept so as to keep them aware of the present medical field. So advertisement by fakes and allied are misleading and should be stopped by any means. It is the responsibility of both print and electronic media not to sensitize the news. Medicine is not a black and white subject, and so also its management. Diagnosis of a patient is essentially hypothetical deductive process, and with new evidence through investigations and knowledge, the diagnosis of some of the cases continues to be refined. However, whatever the diagnosis be, the management of the patient generally includes such uncertainties into account, and the treatment continues. There is a need for detailed longitudinal study, research, and prevention protocols, which is lacking in our country. What hospitals should do? In government hospitals, this can be done as a part of the general reform for the hospital service in the form of improvement of the service in a global fashion, employment of the adequate number of doctors, and other steps to ease the rush of patients and long waiting hours. Use of computer and internet technology, record documentation, safeguard doctor staff and hospital. Hospital security should be strengthened and it needs to be properly interlocked with the nearby police station. No arms, ammunition by patient or their relatives should be allowed inside the hospital. Mobile shop visitors restricted. There should be transparency on different rates and billings, and there should be a proper complaint retrieval system in the hospital. Bouncer, security guards already discussed, hospital staff and insurance, all the varieties. Fire, hospital should be insured for fire, accidental injuries, death, natural, man-made, riot, bomb, arsonic include safeguard for our monetary protection. Good rapport and interpersonal relation with the police and politician are important. We have prepared a master file where everything, right from fire protection to all the things for medical, for cashless, for rates, for indoor patient admission protocol, OPD patient or admission protocol we have prepared, and it creates no problem. Avoid conflicting, confusing patients, complicated cases, out of subspecialties cases. Infrastructure should be unbreakable. Design, consult the design architecture, glass structure, attract for violence and vandalization of the hospital structure. So we should find out some alternative to this. If you adopt NAVEEN, again checklist at all levels, and you will minimize all mistakes and you will prevent all these things. What patient and relative and society at large should do to prevent the violence. In case of vandalism or assault, it is immense responsibility of the patients and their relatives and society at large to prevent this violence. We should explain that modern medicine is neither cheap nor 100% effective in all cases, and there should not be over expectation on the outcome of treatment in a serious case. Discuss them that disputes between patient and hospital or doctors are not to be sorted through violence, but in a civilized society there are avenues dispute redressal should be used. Although violence against doctors and other health workers is not uncommon, the incidence in India seems to be increasing alarmingly. Many remedies have been advised to tackle this situation, which we have already discussed, and many more are remaining and developing as the days pass. As there are certain responsibilities of the doctors and other healthcare workers, and similarly responsibility also have to be borne by patients and their relatives, political parties, hospital authorities, law maintaining machinery, media and government to see that healthcare improves and violence against doctors is strongly dealt with. But unfortunately, there are more lacunae and laziness rather than actual remedies to prevent and control. Laws cannot stop attacks on doctors, also cannot stop vandalize hospital. We should focus on fixing the healthcare gaps. Violence against doctors is a symptom of multi-organ failure of our public healthcare system that needs radical treatment. Prevention is better than cure. Dial 100 if needed. Do not afraid. We should know how to avoid abuse or attack. Avoid the person who is problem creating. Be bold to avoid such type of persons. Avoid nuisance value patients. Refuse them gently, boldly, and bluntly. It's a multifaceted approach involving a number of game changers are required. But remember, when it comes to our head, instantly there is nobody to help except your staff, colleagues, friends, police, if in time, and our luck, good or bad. Keep them in full confidence and abreast with all information. In case of complication, again, I would stress iatrogenic, incidental or natural, be gentle, sympathetic, cooperative, honest, and cost reduction is advisable. Always take care of the patient, never lose confidence, keep courage, confidence, patience. These are the best weapons to prevent or settle these issues peacefully and positively. Respect Murphy's law in any situation. We are moved by stories of the soldiers martyred on the battlefield to save our motherland and kill enemies. But imagine a healthcare worker fighting death and disease for the patient, losing her life on duty while trying to save someone else, and more shockingly, in the hands of the man she was trying to heal. Nobody, even press, will take much of the cognition of the murder. And this is the future of the medical practice. We all will stop attending the hospital directly, and we will be working with remote robotic technology to safeguard ourselves from the assault from the patient or their relatives. And this is the future of our practice. we imagine if we cannot stop violence, we all should get united and do it unanimously and convince the government as the Rajasthan doctors convince the Rajasthan government. Thank you all.
So thank you, Dr. Govind, sir. Thank you all the speakers for enlightening about the causes, the preventive measures, and the how to handle the violence. So now we'll go for the panel discussion. If any of the audience are having any questions, they can drop down their questions in the drop box. So as per the presentations now in the
Dr.
panel
Katta,
discussion.
can I add one thing?
Yes,
Just
sir.
in one of the talk, Dr. Govind Purohit had said about the death in the operation theatre. And the relatives are not ready for the post-mortem, then you should take it in writing from them. But nowadays, it is better that if there is a death in the operation theatre, you hand over the body to the police. Let the police decide whether they want to go for post-mortem or give it directly to the patient.
But let me take questions one by one. I will highlight all these points. We'll discuss it. So for the discussions, we are having all the speakers and Dr. V.J. Purushottham, who is the chairman of the Legal and Grievance Committee of the IOA. He is a leading orthopedic surgeon from the Karnataka, Bengaluru, and very vast experience in the medical legal field also apart from the orthopedics. So welcome you, Dr. Purushottham. So as per the presentation, the main causes of violence against the hospitals is, as highlighted by the various speakers, is mainly the patients and their attendants are not happy with the bills, and there are issues with the money. The another issue is the bad outcome of the patient or resulted to the death of the patient, or there are complaints of the time, basically the patient or not attended in the emergency or ICU well in time. There is lack of communication, or there are notorious attendants and the various external factors to provoke the violence in the hospitals against the doctors. So all the doctors, once there are violence or impending violence in hospitals against the doctors, we are in the fear about the damage to our property, damage to our body, and damage to our reputation, the arrest, police case, criminal cases. Regarding the prevention, everybody has highlighted about the communication, the documentation, the local rescue team, when to call police, use of CCTV cameras, updating yourself and update your hospital infrastructure, and so many things. So to sum up, how to tackle it, let me share some slides from my side. So just a minute. Yeah. So what steps should be taken for the violence? So as we have discussed, what are the signals that may be associated with the violence? What are the behavior that helps to diffuse the anger and be alert and be quick to act? So these are the steps which we have discussed. If anybody wants to add something in this, most welcome. We'll take one by one how to handle. So, Dr. Purushottham, can you enlighten us regarding the counseling about the before the patient's admission, then during the treatment, and when we are discharging or there is bad outcome? So, how to prevent the violence or to frustration of the patients and their attendants with the counseling and the communication? That is very important step, so that we can prevent their angerness and their provokedness for the violence against us. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Good evening to all of you. And nice hearing all of you speaking about it. I think, like you all said, communication is the biggest gap that we have to fill up to address this problem. One, I would say, from my point of view, having in government service and having my private practice also, I would say the attitude has to change now. The attitude is the biggest thing which we are carrying on. If you talk to any of the other profession, look into the other categories which is also undergoing this situation. Why are we thinking that only doctors are being attacked? Only it is happening in our community. No, it's not right. If you turn on the local news channel or look into the local newspaper, there are many instances where other profession also being attacked. But unfortunately, we are in a profession where life and death is in question, and lifestyle, that is limb saving, we are in. So, in my opinion, there are three types of patients we come across. One is highly emotionally charged people. Whatever you do, their emotion will be always expressed at the drop of the hat. Like even if there is small let up, they will express their displeasure. The second group is moderately emotionally charged people. And these people will only express their emotion when things are extreme corner, like extreme stage, or like death or some very unfortunate thing that happens. And the third one is mischief mongers. You do anything, they are there. They just want to create some problem there. So they are there for creating problem. So I think if you are asking me challenges in counseling, I think you have to look into one, that is communication has to be improved and attitude has to take off that noble thing, in doctor profession is a noble profession, that has to be dropped. I think that can only work in charitable institute, not even in government setup. In government setup also, it is slowly waning. So the attitude and communication with the backup, the counseling part has to look into the type of patients, like in these three categories. For example, in the government setup where we are working, we have a small counseling unit, which, attends to, I'm sorry to say, that I told you, the first category, highly emotionally charged, that always is expressed by one community and one locality of this Bangalore city. So these counseling people target them and try to address, give them more attention to them to explain the things about what is happening and what is to be needed. So in my opinion, in the backdrop of this communication and attitude and categorizing the patient into these three categories, I think you can address a good counseling setup which can address this situation to some extent.
So you mean to say that good listening, good understanding, good feeling of their worries and act according to that is the main key factor?
Yes, we have to be sympathetic, empathetic, and we have to be, we have to go in rhyme with them. We are no more the gods or whatever. The noble tag is to be taken. We are like them, like, come up, and in private setup, we are like any business. It is a hotelier or some cables network provider, something like that. Why are we ashamed of addressing ourselves? We are selling and we are buying, allowing them to buy also. So that is the profession we are into. So we shouldn't be ashamed of that profession. And like somebody, I don't know which of the speakers, sorry, we should be well armed. We should have our bouncers or the protectors, whatever the setup, according to the size of your hospital. And very good important thing is, few years back, I was in a meeting with the top police officials of our Bangalore city. One of the commissioner of the police was indicating that the rapport between hospital and local police station should be very good, should be very, very good, because whatever the amount of bouncers you have or security personnel you have, the people get, feared about the uniform. If the people walk in with the uniform, then that is where some amount of diffusion can happen. So good rapport with the local police is very important also.
Yeah, thank you. Any panelists want to add something into it?
Yeah, Dr. Rahul, I absolutely agree what Dr. Purushottam was referring. In Bhopal, we make a point that on every 1st of July, the Doctor's Day, we keep our annual day and we invite the police commissioner, collector, and those people who are useful to us in this type of situation. Secondly, as I informed that we have made a zone. So in that zone, the police officer, that is the in charge of police station, and the other people, they are being taken care of, and they will do a medical checkup or some investigations in their hospitals. So they have a rapport with the officials. So whenever if it is required, they immediately reach and they help. And I absolutely agree. A single dress is more important than 8 or 10 boxers. So that way you can make a rapport and they do help you, because in our WhatsApp group, all inspectors and DSP, they are in our WhatsApp group. So if something happens and if you put it on that WhatsApp group, it is seen by the senior officials. So the TI also, that is in charge of the police station, he helps because he has to give his explanation why he was late. So that's absolutely right, that you should have a good rapport with the local police station.
Yeah, so that is another important point. So now the important thing is how to manage the violence relative. So that is very important. So many of you have already discussed about the rush team. So who should be there in the rush team and how they should come and handle the situation, not only regarding their presence, but sometimes their members come and start talking to the relatives or the patient. So what to do? What is your suggestion regarding the rush team? You call upon your colleagues, the local area doctors, your other professional colleagues, whenever there is impending violence or violence at your hospital. Say many people come around, they show their strength and the presence, but what is their role in the communication with the patient's relatives? What is your guidance? Karne sir, would you like to say something? No,
Hello, you asked me to speak? Yeah. These all things were done in Pune city, especially in suburb. One is about the rush team. We had a local rush team for every area of Pune where every doctor is given 1 or 2 numbers, and then they call that number, and the remaining, those particular people will call everybody. So at least 20 to 25 doctors are there within 10 or 15 minutes in that area, in that particular hospital. Second, which was done was, as you said, bouncers. That there was one central hospital, a private hospital, about 350 bedded hospital. They had kept the bouncers and they were visiting. They have given a membership. They were visiting those members every day, especially during the afternoon when the billing is done. And for the sake of any emergency, within 10 minutes, the bouncers were going there. So these 2 things were done already. And third thing, our own member, Dr. Santosh Kakade, he had an institution where they have formed a association of the retired police officers. And those retired police officers were divided according to their region. And they were coming there as a rapid action force, just recently retired police officers, for any violence in the hospital. So all the 3 things are going on in Pune, and that is working very well.
But they can prevent the damage to the property of the hospital. I am basically concerned about the communication. Sometimes what happens is somebody from the rush team comes there and start talking to the patient's relatives, and they are not aware about the facts of the cases. So that is also sometimes creating confusion and creating some issues with their communication. So what is your advice or any of the panelists' comment upon that?
Convincing communication is not only the communication, it is a convincing communication. Because most of the time the administrator, they say, oh, I have tried to explain, but they are not listening to that. That means they are not convinced. So this is very, very important, not only from the point of view of the violence, but it is important from the practice also. Hello?
Sir, practicing the communication, doctor-patient communication we have discussed. Once there is violence, if their rush team has arrived to your hospital, So your colleagues started talking to the patient relatives, try to convince them that there should not be anything, but they are not aware about the facts of the case. So what is your advice? Who should talk to the patient relative, even though there is rush team or you have some bouncers or some security teams with you? So what is your advice? Who should communicate? Even you have all your rush team, other things. So either it is first to tell the details about the cases to your colleague, then make a plan what to communicate and how to communicate.
The main doctor is the one who should communicate. That is the most important situation, most important. All further things are when the things go out of control of that communication. But 99.99% situations can be averted by anticipating it first, by anticipating and facing that in the initial phase. You should run only when the things are going out of control and there is a threat to your life. But most of the time, if you yourself, a doctor himself, who has spoken before surgery or before admission of the patient, the doctor speaks himself with the relatives, and important thing is that if the patient is serious, on the one side you treat the patient, but on the other side keep the relatives informed, sensitize them that the patient is serious. So these are the two things, because suddenly if you are telling patient is dead, then they get wild. So the main doctor who is there has to communicate with the patient. That is the most important. Don't leave it to your juniors or the administrative staff, non-medical staff.
Okay. Anyone want to add anything to this?
I think I have little different opinion from here. In our experience, what we have seen, we have found out that doctors are poor communicators at that point, because they are at that threshold of having committed something, whether knowingly or unknowingly or with result oriented, whatever has happened. So I would think instead of the doctor communicating in that situation, somebody who is available in the team, who is able to communicate well, he or she should be able to do. For example, in our setup in one of the hospitals, it so happened that when there was a death, the declaration of the patient's death was delayed till an NGO team arrived, which was helping that hospital in organizing camps and all. So one of the prominent personality of the NGO who was very well known to that locality was able to convince that group of aggrieved relatives of the patient, telling that the situation was out of control from the doctor's hand and such and such. What I mean to say is, I don't think the rush team or the doctor team is always reliable in handling that situation. There has to be another para team which is good in communication, which is good in expressing and taking into confidence of the patient or patient's relatives there in that situation.
We have one question from the audience, that it appears that the solution prescribed for the violence is violence tackles by violence. I mean, bouncers tackles the violence. That is eye for an eye. Is it the way forward? So their query is, why the bouncers should tackle the violence?
See, the situation is different for different scenarios. There is not a single formula which will be helpful for all situations. Now, if the persons who are opposite to you are of the lower category or from the slum area, there the bouncers are helpful. But because they are every time that should not be tit for tat. But if the persons opposite are really aggrieved and they are a little angry, depending on the situation, one should handle. Everything depends whether you want a bouncer or whether you want to injure, you want a doctor's rush team, or all those things that depend upon what kind of the people who are aggrieved people are there.
No, I think
one formula will not be applicable to everybody. Sorry.
Depends on the reaction of the crowd. Like some crowds are not always physically reactive, like they are only emotionally charged. They just want convincing reply or explanation. They don't want any physical encounter there. The bouncers come into picture. Let us take an example of a bar and restaurant. Why do we have? Do you think the bouncers come there and just collar them and start hitting them? No. If the customer is agree, I mean, start doing something violent in that thing, he won't, the bouncer will not come and start bouncing on him. He just takes him when he starts talking to him. So the bouncer is not always physically involved. And coming to the point, the aggrieved members not always physically charged. So mentally or emotionally charged has to be addressed most of the times. So they should be in our setup. The bouncers and counselors are same. They will do the dual role. The counselor will become bouncer when things are required. Attention is required.
Most of the time, it has been seen that either there are some issues with the billing, they don't want to pay the bills, or they want the immediate compensation in case of the death. So there are presentations with the dead bodies either inside or outside the hospitals. They don't take it for the funeral or their last rites. So the issue is either for billing or for compensation or the demand of the annex of the doctor. So that is very important. In Rajasthan, we have gone for the few acts and laws for this. Apart from the Prevention of Violence Act, we have an SOP. Doctor cannot be arrested in a routine manner. There should be inquiry and there should not be direct FIR in any case, any medical accident or hospital death. And another recently, yesterday, a bill has been passed, the Honor of Dead Body Act, where nobody can refuse to take the charge of dead body and cannot refuse patients and their attendants and relatives refuse to take the body for the funeral. You have to inform the police. Police will take into the custody. If somebody refuses, there are penalties, imprisonment from 1 year to 5 years. And if somebody provokes them for the demonstration with the dead body, he will also be penalized with the imprisonment of 5 years. We have just passed another bill yesterday in Rajasthan with the help of IMA. Was pursuing it since very long, since I am the acting secretary of IMA in Rajasthan. So for all these bills, I've been behind. So then another important topic is CCTV. So, sir, where are these CCTV? Because in many hospitals, it is mandatory to put the CCTV cameras. But most of the time, it has been not seen. They have not been put in the proper areas with the proper angles where the patient's attendants do gather, create some nuisance over there. And most of the time, they are not properly running condition. Their recordings are not properly stored in a manner. So what is your guidance? What is the importance of CCTV? And in case of there are future litigation, the cases and the FIR, what are the role of the CCTV recordings in that? So is it a very good evidence for the violence? Any one of you, please?
No, the CCTV will not be the very much deterrent to the violence to those persons who don't bother it. Again, I say lower class people who are actually gundas. They are very well connected. They are so much. I mean, in the Pune now these days, that Koita gang means that knife gang is moving all around and demolishing the certain things. But it is definitely deterrent to the most of the people in a sense if they know that their these acts are recorded. Especially this not only for the violence. It's for the allegations against the doctors. One of the orthopedic surgeons from Hyderabad was saved by of the charges of molestation just because of CCTV. So CCTV in the consulting room also, in the reception, in the is a nowadays better to have it. The police are making it mandatory at the entrances, but then at every places where you are likely to come in the problem, it's better to have CCTV. Just don't put CCTV in the operation theater or in the patient examination area. At all other places, it is advisable now to put a CCTV.
Can I be excused, please?
Yeah.
I had told Dr. Rahul that because I have a small personal dinner going on, the weekend dinner. So if you can, we'll get to meet sometime. Thank you all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. PURUSHOTTAM. It's good to have your inputs. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
you.
Good night. Good night. Good to have.
So it's very important to have CCTV cameras in the main areas, the waiting rooms and the receptions, the ICU and the emergency rooms. where you can have the recording if there something has happened, the patients and attendants are creating some kind of nuisance, some damage to property, that evidence can be used in the later on with the FIR and the cases. So when to call the police? So this is very important. So every time, if there are unexpected deaths in your hospital or intraoperative or immediate post-operative death, you should call the police for the postmortem. So these are some situations where the police should be called. It is must that there must be suspected homicide or suicidal death, unknown or unconscious patient, death on operation table, suspected unnatural death, instant death after treatment, surgery, reaction of the medicine, and a married lady dying within the 7 years of the marriage due to any reason. And it is also advisable to call the police if there is undiagnosed death within 24 hours of the admission, in case of the poisoning, accidental death. In case of hospital death, if accident is not related to the medical management, like fall from the staircase, and unexpected or rare complications. So it is important that information to the police shall be given in the writing and acknowledgement should be taken. The telephonic information, if you are giving, note down the name, buckle number, designation, and increase police for the postmortem. Dr. Karne will highlight the importance of all these things regarding for the in cases of the violence.
No, you are absolutely correct, sir. As I said, that now don't rely on anybody, even if it's a very dear friend or even your relative also. In such cases, even if there is wherever the PM is required, you should hand over the body to the police. Let the police and the relatives of the patient decide what to do, whether to go for a postmortem or not. But the doctors or the hospital should not take any responsibility now. The situation has changed a lot. It was totally different around 10 years ago. But these days, it is better to call the police and let the police handle further things. Because once you are trapped, especially if the person is cremated, then it becomes very, very, very difficult to defend yourself if something goes wrong or something else is found. So it is always better to go for the postmortem and all such things. And second thing, inform the police. Even for the poisoning also, you inform the police, let the police decide whether to go for further things or not. Let police and related decide that. But it is your responsibility that you should inform it. I always tell to the patient, it is the government which has put this on our head. We can't do anything, because if I don't inform the police, I will be arrested or I will go behind the bars. So once you tell this thing to the patient, that is not in my hands, the government has made it compulsory for us, and that's why I have to call the police. Generally, there is no issue.
Sir, there is one incident, maybe 3 months ago at Jaipur Essence Medical College. We were celebrating the 75th anniversary of our medical college. There was a friendly cricket match going on the ground. And one of the alumni, 50-year-old doctor, suddenly fainted on the ground, and he has cardiac arrest. Since we taken to him to the accident emergency, he was died. Even all the CPR was done on the ground. But their family members, although they were also the doctors, they insisted for the postmortem. So they are not accepting the death of the doctor on the ground. It was basically cardiac arrest. So in every case where there is unnatural death, you should advise for postmortem. So that is the keynote that can prevent you in many situations. I think that is the key take-home message. So you must be also aware of the Doctors Protection Act. In every state almost there are Doctors Protection Act, and you should have a copy of that available in your hospital, because the police members most of the time do not aware about that, local police members. And as in Rajasthan, we have notified a special SOP, especially in various other states, there is SOP regarding in case of violence, how police has to act upon in those situations. So I would like to tell everybody with their state associations, they should notify a standard operating procedure for the police in cases of violence in the hospital. So the knowledge about the Doctor Protection Act in your particular state is very important. Karne sir, would you like, or any one of you, Dr. Deepak Shah sir, you would like to say something in this?
Usually the problem in this Doctor Protection Act is that though they and our Madhya Pradesh, as rightly said, it's a cognizable and non-bailable. But non-bailable doesn't stand into the court of law because until unless it's a 7 years or more imprisonment, the bail is a right rather than an exception. So this is a very big disparity between the two. And there has been a Supreme Court judgment where all these cases which has got a less than 7 years, they are not very much interested not to give a bail. So that is a contradictory segments which has to be corrected at some place or the other. And I have gone through the different state protection acts, and everywhere it is nowhere it is more than 7 years. So even if it is a non-bailable, I mean, the person who has done the violence or all the culprits, they are being scot-free immediately. This has to be brought to the notice. Otherwise, it's a good act, and one should at least have something in their hospitals to show that you can be arrested, you can that I do agree.
You are absolutely correct, Dr. Shah, because in Maharashtra also it was tried to make it 7 years, but the lawmakers are not in the mood to help the
Yes.
doctor so much, and they are not. We are trying that for more than 15 years now. That you make it 7 years, otherwise it is a valuable one and non-valuable, if not non-valuable. But somehow we have failed to sensitize the lawmakers that we require to do something more than what is going on now. And it is going in the other way. The lawmakers are protecting the doctors that we have seen everywhere now. So that is a bad situation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Even in 2007, we were forcing for this particular protection act. There was such a huge resentment from administration, all the IS lobby, and the politicians also. It was only Shivraj Singh Chauhan, our chief minister. He said, no, it is a requirement because at that time, suddenly, there were 2-3 incidences which has happened in Bhopal, and that helped us to have this particular law. In the last almost 15 years, I think hardly 4 or 5 cases has been filed. For this, we are also to be blamed because we don't go and ask the police officials to book a case under Doctors Protection Act, where you have some advantage of compensation of your property loss and other things. So until unless it is made 7 years, and I'm sure no politician, no administrators, no lawmakers are interested to make it 7 years.
The issue of 7 years is that at the state level, they say if they make it 7 years, there is some conflict with the CRPC section. So now there is demand with the central act, the Medical Protection Act, where the kind of penalties would be there, including 7 years. The IMA is behind it, and I hope maybe in next few months we'll have another central Medical Protection Act very soon. So now the important thing also when to say no and how to say no. This is also important. Anyone who want to highlight this point? When to say and how to say no.
The more person becomes mature, and the elderly one, he learns to say no. The more youngsters and the boiling blood, they feel it offended to say no. Why I should say no? I can do it. I can do all those things. But over a period of time, that is there, and that is as advice as an elderly one. I tell to everybody, learn to say no, because you will lose in one case what you have earned in 1,000 cases. So understand the situation. One patient is gone, nothing happens, but one should understand when to refuse the patient rather than when to accept one.
So let us conclude today's discussion. Anyone want to highlight any point which we have not discussed? Any queries or any take on
Rahul,
this.
you had chosen the subject in such a very well manner, and even all the speakers have elaborated everything. And even your lecture at the end also has got almost all the aspects regarding the violence as well as the change scenario in the society. Really, hats up to you for that is very much an elaborate discussion.
One last question, sir. In case of there is violence or there is damage to the property, so many persons are making videos from their mobile phones and they are making it viral. Another thing is sometimes your CCTV cannot capture the main violence areas or the damage to the property areas. So what is the role and use of such kind of videos if you ask some of your staff member to make those videos, and how those videos can be kept for the evidence once you go for FIR?
And that is one of the very important evidence, that is rather the audio visual is very, very valuable evidence, because there are certain circumstantial evidences, there are certain witnesses also, but to have an audio visual recording is one of the very important and powerful evidence when the case stands in the court and when the proceedings occurs.
I think if somebody has to take a video or audio recording on their some kind of instrument, that instrument should be kept separately, because if you transfer those capturing videos or audios to another instrument, and if you put that evidence in the court of law, so that cannot be admissible.
So it will be called as a tempered video.
Yeah, so you have to protect that special instrument, keep it aside for that evidence. The original recording instrument is very important for the evidence. That is only admissible in the court of law. So
and second thing is notice. It is notice that this area is under the CCTV surveillance. Officially you should have a permission of doing any recording. So just a notice which is there under every area, at every area, that this area is under the CCTV surveillance. So that will solve that issue of the non-permission.
One more important thing you also said, sometimes we have to go to file an FIR against the patient relatives, attendants, or some other persons who are damaging our property, creating violence. So writing down the FIR and its contents are also very important. So there should not be any hurry to submit a FIR, because for one incident, if you have submitted one FIR, you cannot submit another one.
It is better to have a lawyer, criminal lawyer with you when you are going to file a FIR. Better to have an expert into that.
Yeah, take your own time and then file a proper FIR with the help of a lawyer. Don't go, otherwise sometimes police says, write down one application, we'll take care. No, don't go to that. You tell them, we have informed you, the prevention protection is your field, we'll submit the proper complaint with consultation of our lawyer. I think that is also very important. You must all agree with this.
Dr. Rahul, a very small suggestion here. Invariably, you don't identify the attendants who were creating a nuisance or the attendants who have done vandalism in your hospital. One of the hospitals where this happened, they could not recognize anybody. So what they did, they just put the name of the husband of the patient. And the husband of the patient was asked to identify those people who were doing vandalism in the hospital. So although the husband was not the main person who was doing it, but then police asked husband to identify the people who have done it. So this could be one of the things where you don't identify the attendants. You can take the help of the relative who has signed the admission paper or the person who has signed the discharge.
Yes, sir. So now the last question from the audience. Enumerate the 3 things that they would consider to be most important to prevent violence against the doctors.
Doctor-patient relation.
First.
That's the first and the foremost thing. That is one. Second, you should always have a good conversation. Don't stop the conversation. And don't leave explaining the patient's condition to your junior. Take out some time, talk to the patient, talk to the attendants. Probably that is the best thing. You can avoid the aggressiveness of the patient and the attendant.
And third thing is alertness. You have
That is
to,
afterwards. Once you land into trouble, then there is a alertness and other objects.
you have to put your energy in that. You should be alert, who can be notorious, can convert into a violent attendant.
Especially for a billing purpose, it is better to have smart receptionist there for tell the bills. You know, there the grudges are much less. For the billing disgruntledness, you know, and better to have a separate area where the others are not there. The explanation of the bill should be in a small room with a sharp person who is there. So there the you know, the psychology is a little bit different. If the bill is told in front at a reception in front of everybody who are in the waiting lounge, then patient has got more, you know, they feel and they make a more ruckus. So that is as far as billing disgruntledness is concerned.
Agreed. He feels that he has got a good backup of the people sitting in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the panelists.
Thank you, Dr.
And the
Katta.
speakers
Congratulations.
for-
Thank you all.
It was a really wonderful medical legal webinar, highly effective and covering all the aspects. And I wish Dr. Under the chairmanship of Dr. Rahul Katta, we can have more and more medical webinars in the future. And so that the doctors do not have to worry about their practice and they can practice without any fear.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night all. Thank you.